I'm trying to look into the origins of the state, and I think I have a general understanding of how the first states originated. That is, they originated from the outgrowth of what we today would call cults. And of course, these cults were compelling to the people at the time because the people at the time, and we're talking up to very recently, were scientific illiterates and had serious parental issues. That is, the way children were raised, even up to the early 1900s, was done in a manner that today we would call that child abuse. And religion today has the advantage of being traditional. And so children are taught to believe in God before they have the proper faculties to evaluate new information. So God is planted in, and then a new layer grows over that to protect and rationalize the belief in God. And I even remember when I was younger that I thought I was bad because I didn't believe in God. Like, I was told to believe in God, that you're supposed to believe in God and all that stuff. But for a while, I just didn't, right? It just sounded too far-fetched. I mean, I believed in Santa Claus, but God just sounded, I mean, that was a great deal more phantasmagorical than even Santa Claus. But it just sounded too far-fetched, but I thought it was immoral to not believe in God. And so I really worked hard to try to believe in God until eventually I did. But anyway, that's how this process is maintained metaphorically. But how does this religion thing begin? And of course, the state comes from the religion. Back then it did, and that's why the separation of church and state is such a big deal, because at the very beginning, church was state. Well, the first believers in mysticism had to be really, really stupid. Okay? And they were. They were the perfect mix of scientific illiteracy and having been abused as children, and thus the belief in a parental God had emotional resonance, and they couldn't evaluate the stupidity of it all, especially since people at the time had dreams, and they didn't know really what dreams were. This all made people of that time extremely susceptible to cults. Now, Sparta. Sparta was a caste system, and there are three main castes. You had the Spartiates, which are the citizens of Sparta, the Perioikoi, yeah, I'm probably pronouncing this wrong. This was considered like the middle class, and by my estimation were actually the most free. And then there were the Helots, were the quasi-slave class. Now, 80% of the population in Sparta were Helots, according to the historian Herodotus at the time he did his estimation, and this ratio had to vary considerably, with the Helots numbering between 170,000 and 224,000 between the years 1000 BC and 195 BC. And the Spartiates typically numbered around 10,000, though there was a significant decline in the number of Spartiates after 371 BC at the Battle of Leuctra. And by 224 BC, there were only around 700 Spartiates, and in 195 BC, Sparta was absorbed into the Achaean League. Now, that is not anything too amazing, as small numbers of people have routinely been able to dominate much larger groups of people, and do so today. And they do it by manipulating the fantasy of the state. But what is amazing is just how obvious it was that the Helots could overpower the Spartiates, yet they didn't. In 464 BC, there was an earthquake that hit the city Sparta, the Sparta proper. And in response to this, a bunch of Helots revolted and established a position at Mount Ithome. Now, I'm probably pronouncing this wrong. And Mount Ithome is right outside the city of Messina. The idea being that if the Helots could repel the Spartan attack at Ithome, the Pamissos Valley would be theirs. This whole green little valley thing next to that other valley. A bunch of Greek city-states, including Athens, sent troops to help put down the rebellion, which I thought was amazing. Why didn't these Greek city-states start jumping all over the Spartans? But no, they sent troops to help put down the rebellion, though the Spartans rejected the Athenian troops. Now, I don't know if the Spartans could have dislodged the Helots from Ithome without the help of the other Greek city-states, but following the Helot revolt, Spartan intervention in foreign wars declined considerably, sans the Peloponnesian War. Now, some blame this change in Spartan foreign policy on the earthquake itself, but Sparta was not a very grand city, and most buildings were like one-story houses. The, quote, city, close quote, was more like a very large village. And so tales about 20,000 inhabitants of Sparta being killed is just silliness. Now, prior to the Helot revolts, in 479 BC, a coalition of Greek forces fought the Persians at Plataea. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly as well. Again, according to Herodotus, the Spartans sent 45,000 men. Of these were 5,000 Spartiate hoplites, 5,000 Paroikoi hoplites, and 35,000 Helots. Now, I have no illusions as to the organizational superiority of the Spartiates to the Helots, but imagine if the Helots en masse just stopped sending grain to Sparta, and the Paroikoi stopped paying taxes to Sparta. And the Spartans had to go out and fight guerrilla wars and collect these taxes against these forces. Just looking at the numbers, it is amazing that Sparta could be held together at all. And unlike today, a spontaneous mob of Helots have been able to fight against the Spartans for a year. And the Helots fought battles alongside the Spartan troops in foreign wars. In 460 BC, there was a Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta. Athens managed to establish an outpost at Pylos, where they encouraged Helot revolt. Now, why wasn't there a revolt around that area, around Pylos? In 464 BC, the Helots had to fight a Spartan force plus the Greek allies that the Spartans had. This time, the Helots would be fighting the Spartans alongside the Athenians. But the Helots did not revolt, and this is the conclusion I'm coming to. They did not revolt because of the ideology of the state. They believed in the Spartan state. You know, this is not to say they don't like that they like it, but they believed in the state. That is, a lot of people, they hate Obama, they hate the government, but they believe in the United States federal government. They believe in the state, and the Helots believed in the ideology of the state, that primeval bugaboo. And it's not like the Spartan state was like providing cops or firemen or education for the Helots. It was clear that the Spartan state was made for one thing, foreign war. And the technology was just people running around with sticks and metallic weaponry. What doofuses and simpletons would fall for such a transparently predatory state? This is what we have to thank the Greeks for. The people today have difficulty seeing through the fog of the state because the state does have, you know, police and education and the roads, and this kind of puts forward an aura of necessity. And the military technology is so advanced that it serves as a psychological barrier. That is, they see the state armies with such incredible technology, and so they assume a state is needed for that because they don't know how to do that. Right? But these Greeks got the ball rolling by being unable to see through low-tech states so utterly transparent. Hell, that sacred cow Socrates couldn't even move himself to leave the very city that called for his death, invoking the love it or leave it argument. No, worse, he claimed that by living in Athens he consented to their rules. So one couldn't even leave it. Socrates wasn't even advanced enough for the love it or leave it fallacy. And Socrates also loved the boys. Pythagoras was part of a cult that worshipped numbers and killed a man who claimed that there existed irrational numbers. I'm sick of this Greek worship. The Greeks were a bunch of sub-redneck, religious fundamentalists, state-worshipping, murderous pedophiles, and their advances could have easily been discovered by anyone else. Bury Greece, bury the Greeks, we owe them nothing.